Welcome to the last unit of grade 6 math, statistics. So what are statistics? Well, we've got a lot of information going on in the world, and we call that information data. So when we're trying to make sense of all the data, there's a lot going on. So statistics is essentially the thing that helps us organize the data. If there's one thing that you write down from this slide, it is this phrase at the bottom. Statistics is the study of data. Okay, so as we go through this unit, we're going to talk about different ways that we can study data. All of them are types of statistics. Write that down. So there's two different types of data that we're going to talk about this year: categorical data and numerical data. Make sure you're taking notes. So categorical data is information that can be sorted into groups: different nationalities, genders, favorite colors, types of food, anything that you can sort in groups. Numerical data, on the other hand, is something I can measure. Heights, weights, amounts of something. Numerical data is represented with numbers. Keep in mind, favorite number is still categorical data because it doesn't represent an amount of something. So it has to be measurable to be numerical data. So if we look at these graphs, I've kind of sorted them into two graphs on the left side of the screen and two graphs on the right side of the screen. Take a minute and see what you notice about those graphs. What do they have in common? What do they have different? So a lot of people may have noticed that the ones on this side over here are pie charts, and they represent percentages of things, whereas the ones on the right side, you might have called them bar graphs. They're actually histograms. We'll talk more about that in another lesson. And they all have different numbers, and they have this word frequency going on the side. Hopefully you noticed that these on the left represent categorical data. So this one's talking about different countries grouped into categories, and this one is talking about different types of dishes on a menu at a restaurant. And so again, they're grouped into different categories. Whereas these two are numerical data. This one's talking about age ranges, and this one's talking about test scores. So this data is collected by questions. So we're going to focus this year on statistical questions. A statistical question is a question that collects numerical data. It allows for there to be variation in the answers, which means that there's not just one correct answer. So an example would be, how many countries have students at ISM lived in? There's not just one answer to this question. Everyone's answer would be a number because I'm asking how many countries, not which ones. But depending on who I ask, there can be a different correct answer. So if I asked Johnny, he would give me one answer. If I asked Fatima, she might give me a different answer. Some non-examples: how many countries has Miss Walmsley lived in? There's, no matter who you ask, if you're asking about how many countries I've lived in, there's only one correct answer to that. And then, what are the nationalities of ISM students? The answers to that question would vary, but it would not give you numerical data. That would be categorical data. And so there are definitely times when questions like this last one here, the nationalities of ISM students, are important and are definitely things we want to take data on, but it's not considered a statistical question because it gives us categorical data as an answer. Let's continue by looking at some graphs of some data. So this data is about the number of active Facebook users worldwide as of the end of 2017. So yes, this data is a little bit outdated. However, what we can see from this data is that the number of users, so that's my y-axis here, my x-axis is the year or the quarter, so every 3 months is considered a quarter of a year. So we can see here that each quarter, the number of users is continuing to increase from 2008 all the way to 2017. This graph, still talking about Facebook, has broken into age bands. So from ages 13 to 19, from ages 20 to 29, 30 to 39, and so on and so forth. But instead of giving numbers of users, they've given percentages.
So out of all of the users, what percentage is in each age band? What do you notice about this graph? So this graph is now talking about the countries and how many Facebook users they have. So it's a little bit different than the other two graphs because the last two graphs we looked at were looking at numerical data. This one is still a bar graph, but now we're talking about categorical data. We've got our categories here. Are there anything that surprised you about this data?